Hello and welcome to Wisdom Trek. This is Guthrie Chamberlain and I am your guide to wisdom. Thank you for joining us for our 7-day-a-week, 7 Minutes of Wisdom podcast. This is day 30 of our trek. Yesterday we discussed how to deal with trekking up mountains and through the valleys as life is. One of the hesitations on creating the various topics for our podcasts and journals each day is that I have no excuse for not taking the dose of my own medicine. Today has been one of those days where working with our base of clients has forced us to scale steep mountains and cascade into deep valleys without much time to enjoy the scenery or to rest. All day, I have had to remind myself, as we will look at in today's podcast, that no matter how huge the task appear today, we need to stay focused on the bite-sized, manageable nuggets, and eventually we will work through it all. We do hike on a lot of different types of trails on our podcast, all with the purpose of gaining wisdom and insight that will help us to create a living legacy. Today we're recording our podcast from our studios at the Big House in Marietta, Ohio. The specialty contractors that have been assisting us in our renovations are nearly finished. The new trim is complete and the new windows in our formal dining room have been installed. Once these rooms are completed, I'll post a couple pictures of our Wisdom-Trek journal entries. As we trudge along the trail today, on our trek of life, we are confronted with some huge obstacles that are blocking our way. When we reach these points along the trail, which will occur more often than we desire, we need to prepare mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually how we are going to handle these seemingly unsurmountable obstructions. Today we want to determine the best way to take these huge and overwhelming tasks or goals and break them into manageable segments. For the question that we will ask today is, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer always is, one bite at a time. Let me assure you that no actual elephants were harmed during the creation of this podcast. Most of us have heard this saying probably many times, but that does not lessen its value. I know that I have used it with my children throughout the years, and even now that they are all adults, when they come to me with some huge issue that they are facing, I always remind them, just eat the elephant one bite at a time. Although I have used this phrase hundreds of times, like probably most of you, we often fail to apply this lesson to our own lives. If you view this elephant as one giant obstacle or goal that your whole life will depend on, you're setting yourself up for grave disappointment. As we trek through life each day, we need to learn to enjoy the small bites along the way. So let's break today's podcast into 3 segments. Number 1, it's not just about the big goals or the huge obstacles. Many people make a major mistake of being entirely overwhelmed by a huge obstacle or focused on big goals. To keep with our hiking analogy, let's say your goal is to become a Colorado 14er, which is to hike all of the 53 Colorado summits that are 14,000 feet or higher. To look at this goal all at once would be a very big obstacle to overcome. But if you strategically plan out over the period of months or even years to accomplish this goal, one summit at a time, then it becomes doable. Now, if you plan to become a 14er in a matter of a few weeks or even months, then you'll probably be in for great disappointment. Long-term goals are great, and even huge obstacles can be exciting because of their challenge. But for every long-term goal you have, or every major obstacle that you face, you want to have many short and medium-term goals for this task. Number 2, the beauty of small goals. When you have a small goal or minor task, there are a couple of advantages. First, a small goal or minor task gives you something concrete to focus on. You can easily become overwhelmed by a huge task. If you don't know specifically what to do or how you're going to handle it, you're just going to get yourself frustrated. As time goes by, you notice that over and over that your goals or tasks still aren't achieved, yet you're not sure what to do about it. When you determine a course of action to overcome that obstacle or to complete that goal, you're much more likely to take inspired action. Secondly, you enjoy the satisfaction of accomplishing that task or achieving that goal and enjoying the benefits. Even if it's a small task or goal, you feel good about checking it off your to-do list, whether that's on paper or just in your head. You also get to have something that brings you a little satisfaction right now. This will give you a sense of accomplishment, even though you have a long way to go on your ultimate goal or overcoming the biggest entire obstacle. And number 3, life is a journey, not a destination. Your satisfaction will probably be a lot higher if you view your life as a series of small milestones instead of one huge milestone that you may or may not ever achieve. This is not to say that we shouldn't have big goals or face major obstacles, only that we should also have smaller ones to focus on along the way. Now, if you want to lose 40 pounds, that's great, but don't just focus on that one huge goal. If you do, then every time you get on the scale, you're probably going to notice that you haven't accomplished or achieved that goal yet. And so you continually reinforce the failure in your mind. So break it down into smaller goals. There are plenty of goals that you can try to accomplish even before you lose 1 pound. Maybe you want to read a book about weight loss, or find a support group, or learn a new healthy recipe. A series of small accomplishments will keep you on track and make you feel good about your life, whether or not you eventually go on to accomplish the ultimate goal. If you end up eating that whole elephant over time, well, that's wonderful. But don't forget, enjoy the bites along the way. In fact, when it comes to losing weight, small portions are a requirement. Now, I have to admit today, for me, was a bit overwhelming. With the business issues that I faced and the overall ramifications of the projects I'm working on, all I could see was that entire elephant in front of me. I had to pause several times throughout the day and remind myself, one bite at a time. This also led me to a letter to the Church of Corinth that the Apostle Paul wrote when he faced some major obstacles. And this is in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 through 11. We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God who raises the dead. And he did rescue us from this mortal danger, and he will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in him, and he will continue to rescue us. And you are helping us by praying for us. Then many people will give thanks because God has graciously answered so many prayers for our safety. So when you are faced with major obstacles or trying to accomplish huge goals, think about what Paul endured, and then draw your strength on the prayers from others and learn to rely on God. Well, that'll finish our podcast for today. If you've missed any of our previous podcasts, please check in at Wisdom Trek on iTunes, Stitcher, or wisdom-trek.com. And tomorrow we will learn about how thinking properly will allow us to grow wise. So please check into our camp tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. If you enjoy our daily dose of wisdom, I encourage you to help us in the following 4 ways. Leave us feedback on the podcast on wisdom-trek.com. Number 2, please subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher so the podcast will be downloaded automatically. Number 3, please leave us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher. This would help us to know how we're doing. And number 4, to spread the word to everyone you know to join us on Wisdom Trek. I thank you so much for this. And the journal for this podcast can be found at wisdom-trek.com, where we also have wisdom nuggets and free resources. As we take this trek together, let us always remember to live abundantly or fully, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. This is Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy the journey, and to create a great day. See you tomorrow.